everybody, grab a drink, grab your black goat. It's time for the Witches Movie Coven. Yes, indeed, witches, talking about witches in movies. I am Patti Negri, one of your hosts, and let me introduce you to my co-host, the wonderful Jason Mankey, right over here with Black Phillip. The wonderful Heather Greene, right over here with Black Phillip. Richard-Lael Lillard, right over here with Black Phillip. And the one and only Courtney Buckley, right here. So we are going to talk about An American Haunting this evening with Donald Sutherland and Sissy Spacek. But before we go there, anybody have anything they want to talk about their past week? Anything going on?
I'm just cold. I moved to California from Michigan not to be cold, and today's high was 64 and cloudy, and I turned on my heater in my office, and I'm complaining about first world problems, and I'm really sorry about that.
I have a heater by my side like 24/7.
I always
I'm in Southern
have a
California.
fan on, no matter how cold it is, no matter what the temperature is, no matter how much snow it is. I always have a fan on, always.
Because you have a lot of fans, Richard-Lael.
No, I only have one fan. It's my only fans.
Oh! Boom.
So Heather, anything new you want to talk into?
No, just having just a regular week, which I kind of like, having a week where everything sort of falls into place. I am working on my upcoming doll presentation, haunted doll presentation. So I am not going to give away details that right now. My new dolls that are being part of that are being fixed, so they don't want to make a presentation in front of a public audience. But I am working on that, and otherwise, I had a really nice light week, which is what we need once in a while.
Once in a while, it is really great. Yes,
absolutely.
Indeed. Courtney, how about you?
That's me. So, it's been, I've been kind of getting back into the swing of things since, the trip that I took. I'm still sleeping with the lights on. I'm not having as many nightmares. I did finally get the courage together and go see a horror movie, and I saw it 2 times. It was a lot. I almost threw up in the parking lot, but that's a story for another day. Evil Dead Rise. I saw Evil Dead Rise.
This is a story for now.
Well, listen, I can do gore. I love horror movies. I can do gore. I don't know if it was just the culmination of all the emotions that I've had with me since I went through what I went through, plus the fact that the gore in this movie was just gratuitous. Also, I can't do vomiting at all, and there was a lot of that. So by the time I got out into the parking lot, I was like, don't talk to me, don't make me laugh, don't anything, because I'm literally about to lose it. But I did enjoy it, and I went again because my little mini me serial killer who loves scary movies, I forgot his favorite kind of scary movie. His favorite scary movie is Saw, so he loves the gore. So I took him to see it, and he thought it was awesome. But yeah, that's what I've been up to.
I love it. Only in our group, somebody who's like throwing up in the yard, couldn't move, don't talk to me. I had a great time.
Yeah. It was funny. I liked it.
Good. Such a good.
Yeah. You guys would appreciate this. Without giving out any spoilers for this movie for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, there was the little girl, when it shows the little girl for the first time, she has these scissors and she's very violently cutting the head off of a doll. And then she tapes the doll's head to a broomstick, and she says, "This is Stephanie, and she's going to protect me."
That's awesome.
I thought of you guys.
Wow. We have to send Heather broomsticks. Okay, can you top that?
Well, I can't really. I mean, I had some okay stories, but none like that. I did a local charity. I designed a couple of tables for a museum here in New York. And so that was lovely. I got to go, and I had a circus table, and then I had a peacock table. It was actually Demeter's Delight, because he's the goddess of the harvest, and Stephanie was coming back for spring. So that was what I did. The funny story about that, though, was I had the Gentleman Psychic. It was, the table presented by the Gentleman Psychic, and then it had the picture that everyone's seen of me in the mausoleum with more hair and my facial hair. And this fella comes up and he says, "Is this you?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Well," I said, "Yes, I shaved." "Oh, I shaved. And he goes, "And it was a few years ago. You were younger then." And I went, "It was 2 years ago."
Oh, what a jerk.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it was fine. It's fine. It was the party itself was fun. I wore my 9-inch heels all day long because, and they're men's shoes. They're 9-inch men's shoes, and it's fun because they're all sort of these very conservative North Shore, Long Island sort of elite, and I show up with my red shoes with 9-inch heels. I loved it. So that was what I did. That was my week.
Oh, that sounds fabulous. I was trying to just mute my phone for a second, but it's not muting. So we are stuck if Willow barks. So I've had a fairly quiet week too. I'm actually here for the first time all week. I'm actually still recovering from my little romp with Zach and the guys for my Ghost Adventures crew. It was fun playing with them again. And that's it. I'm home. I'm home for another week. So yay. And then I'm heading to Texas. If anybody's in the Dallas area, I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be at Miracles of Joy, which is the cutest little metaphysical shop in the Dallas area, doing a whole weekend of magic and classes and workshops and talking to dead people, all that fun stuff. And I'm going to see if I could fit because he feels so bad. I'm going to see if I could get Black Phillip in a suitcase. No promises.
Oh, I forgot something.
Okay.
You may have been able to see it. I got a mystery control order. So this is the new Ghost Bait Trucker hat, which I will be wearing on Scared and Alone future episodes. And Patty, I have my Spellcaster sweatshirt. I don't know if you guys can see with the back of it. It has become my new favorite article of clothing. It's so comfortable. It fits so well, and I love it. And everyone should run out and buy it. And if you scan where is it? Right there, the QR code. Right there, it'll bring you to mysterycontrol.com, and you can order all your stuff too.
And there's so much fabulous stuff on mysterycontrol.com. You could get Bro Witch, you could get Power Panties, you could get Witches Movie Coven blankies, and everybody needs one. So anyway, I guess that's our check-in. Everybody, happy Wednesday, everybody. So we were going to do, for everybody who didn't hear back, I tried to tell a couple of people, we were going to do Bell Book and Candle, but we just could not find it anywhere that you could actually watch it. It's missing from the world. So we're going to hold that back until we can find it. Use code Patty and you'll get 25% off. 25% off. So anyway, so we're not doing Bell Book and Candle. So we switched it to an American Haunting. So as I always do, should we move it over to Heather for her expertise story on what that is?
Sure. I'll just put it in some context. Basically, this came out in 2005, and this was a period of time that we saw a lot of paranormal movies, especially ones relating to ghosts and spirits specifically. And in the witch film realm, we have a series of films that I labeled the ghost witch films. And they sort of got triggered by the success of the Blair Witch Project, which was 1999. It was the tail end of the period of time where witch films generally were really popular. It was the tail end of the popularity of things like The Craft and Charmed and Bewitched that were happening in the late 90s. The Blair Witch came out, and then it shifted for the most part the make of witch films, and that was it triggered a ton of Blair Witch. There were not remakes, I'm sorry, second, third, which we don't talk about very much. And there were other ones, silly ones. And then there was just a stream of ghost witch related films. And so this falls right into that towards the end of the period. But you have things like Paranorman in the animated realm. You have things like Darkness Falls. You have The Conjurer, not The Conjuring, which comes later, but The Conjurer. And there's a bunch of like lower grade ones too, B films and stuff. So there's just a string of them. So this fits into that realm very nicely. And it's based on, and I say based on very loosely, the story of the Bell Witch, which the Blair Witch is a made up story for the most part, kind of based on legend tripping. The Bell Witch is an actual legend that exists in Tennessee, northern Nashville areas where it originated. So it's a little different in terms of Blair Witch versus Bell Witch. But this movie is very loosely based. It sort of takes some of it and makes up sort of its own thing. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Jason's shaking his head. Yes. We'll get to that. And I will talk a little bit later when I get to whether I like the film or not and get into what I would think about it, just to save that and let other people talk, because I have some critiques and some comments. But I think what's really interesting about this film, just to add, is that it's not often we see films like this that have such renowned stars in it. Not horror doesn't often do that. They might have a star in it early on in their career, but horror doesn't often get a Donald Sutherland and a Sissy Spacek. So that was kind of like going into it, you go, oh, look at these guys. So that was pretty surprising to see that. So there's some interesting things about this film, and there's some things we are not so interesting or problematic, but we can get to that later. I'll let someone else talk now.
Thank you. Hello, Norway. Hello, Norway. We thank you guys. Everybody is checking in. Hi, Florida. Hi, Norway. Hi, Cairns, Australia. Yay. We love it. We're international. Yay. Thank you. So, all right. Love Sissy. Who wants to go first?
I grew up in Tennessee. So and most people don't know that, but I did. I grew up in the American South, where I went to junior high and high school. And the Bell Witch is a big deal when you're a kid at that age. And my first experience with the Bell Witch was my friends from church would say, hey, let's call the Bell Witch. And you would go into a dark room, and it was supposed to be 100% dark, no light, and you were supposed to stare into a mirror and then say, I hate the Bell Witch, I hate the Bell Witch, I hate the Bell Witch 3 times. And then she would come out of the mirror. And one time, some of my friends did this, and the guy came out with a scratched nose. Now, I'm pretty sure he scratched his own nose because he was that kind of person. But we grew up relatively terrified about the Bell Witch, and it's a big deal. It is a very real local legend. And there are lots of stories like that. I think you say Bloody Mary 3 times, you get similar things. But so I grew up with the Bell Witch. And so I was kind of excited to watch this because I wanted to see this childhood legend come to life. And I saw nothing about the childhood legend that I grew up with in this movie. You know, for us, the Bell Witch was a scary old woman. And in this particular film, the Bell Witch isn't a witch at all. It's a poltergeist from psychic activity of a young woman. So it was very disappointing. It felt like the Bell Witch is an add-on to this movie to give it some gravitas, to connect it to something else that it doesn't need to be connected to, and I don't think has a real connection to actually what happens in this movie. So there's a little background there about the Bell Witch in the late 80s, early 90s in a small town called Gallatin outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and my friends who were probably, scratching their own noses and blaming it on a ghostly witch.
Yep. I knew you were going to have a story, Jason. I knew you. As soon as I said this is Bell Witch, Jason's going to have something to say about this.
It was inescapable. I mean, it really was. And all of a lot of my early occult things were in church. That's when we had seances. And yeah, and Richard-Lael understands because that's how it was. Of course,
I grew up. We would go to Tennessee every year, and then we'd go on to Atlanta to visit my grandmother. We'd go through Tennessee, and there was a Pentecostal convention that we would go to in Nashville. So we're on the same page.
And I read something, just to reiterate what you're saying, is I read something that the actual Bell family and would have or did, and I don't know for sure, I think it was on one of the historical sites regarded, were involved in occult like stuff because that was very common through the church. And none of that is in the film.
Yeah, the timing, if this happened in the 1819s, 1820s, is a little early for spiritualism, but there was certainly plenty of occult activity going on in America. People digging for buried treasure, people believing that spirits moved that buried treasure, which was why no one ever found it, but also doing a lot of magic from things like the Key of Solomon. People think that wasn't common in 1820, and the exact opposite is true. It was extremely common in 1820. So yeah, they could have been doing some occult things. Yeah, and there is also some debate over whether or not the Bell Witch is a true story, because it really wasn't written down until 1890.
Right.
And then all of the source materials that document it in that 1890s book have never been found and probably don't exist. And by 1890, first accounts are no longer happening. Even secondhand accounts are no longer happening. So you're pretty far removed from it. There's a Bell Witch cave that you can still visit where things allegedly happened there. Like a kid was pushed out of the cave when he was stuck in a part of it at one point or something. So there's lots of mythology and lore, and it doesn't all fit together. Though I'm sure that to inspire something that has lasted now for at least 120 years, if not 200 some years, I'm sure there's a kernel of truth to this, that there was some sort of haunting there in Tennessee. Tennessee's a pretty haunted state anyway, so it doesn't surprise me.
Tennessee is very haunted. And Ruby Falls. Do you know anything about Ruby Falls?
Yep.
You do, Heather, but maybe
Yeah.
that was our family cave that we would go through every year. We'd have to go. We'd have to stop off at Ruby Falls at Lookout Mountain, and we'd have to go into the cave and play 2001: Space Odyssey. Ba, 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 ba.
I have not been in Ruby Falls. My kids have. I have been to Lookout Mountain, and I've been to those to all that area and Cloudland Canyon and that whole corner. It's gorgeous, beautiful, but I have not been in Ruby Falls, and I will not go in Ruby Falls. So.
Why?
It's spelunking, it's caving, you go way underground, and I'm just not interested in that. Just flat out, I'm just not interested. I'll go up on the mountain though, but not in the cave.
Well, I'm kind of the opposite, because I am heights really terrify me, but I will go into a cave. I mean, of course, that's maybe I hang up my deck in a cave. I've been accused of that once or twice.
Wow.
So I'm opposite of that. But on the Bell Witch, though, I love the folklore behind it. I love the legend. But for the movie, I don't really like Disney, but I think I would much rather have watched Tinkerbell Witch.
Tell us how you really feel.
Wow, that's scathing.
Yeah, it was. I fell asleep the first time, and I had to go back and then watch it. And then I fell asleep again. And then by that point, my rental had gone out and I didn't want to buy it again. So I had to watch bits and pieces of it. So it's, it has, by the way, on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 5 out of 10 rating, by the way. And I think that was far too generous.
Hey, glass half full there, friend. That's a glass half full.
Glass half full.
Well, they were right about the Rotten Tomatoes, because that was what it was.
See, being a West Coast girl, we never really heard about the Bell Witch. That just never made it out all the way to the West Coast, at least in my world. Even what we did in the window in the mirror, we did it in the pitch black in a mirror, going, "I believe in Mary Worth. I believe in Mary Worth. I believe not letting." So everybody has their own things along the way, but I didn't know what to compare it to as far as what the Bell Witch was, other than also of seeing, Blair Witch Project, which didn't tell me anything either. So, okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay, go for it.
So the very first scary movie that I ever watched in my whole life was the Blair Witch Project. And it scared me. I mean, granted, I was younger, but it scared me senseless. So then that like lived rent free in my brain, and I kept trying to look it up, or in the early days of the internet and whatever, and I kept coming across this story of the Bell Witch. So when this movie came out, I was very excited to see it. I watched it, and I remember being enraged by the end of it. Like I wanted this to be a horrifying story, like to me Blair Witch was, and it just wasn't. I think also because of how long ago it was, I had not processed my own life trauma enough to be able to appreciate what this movie was, because I experienced exactly what this movie showed. And watching it again today, so when I suggest, I thought this would be a great movie to talk about. Not that I loved this movie, because I didn't. But when I watched it again today, I had a little bit of a profound moment, honestly, because now I'm many years older and I've done all the work and I've processed it. So watching it wasn't as painful for me as I think like that gut reaction was the first time. And it almost healed a little part of me towards the end. Like, I mean, spoilers, guys, but it's been out since 2005.
20 years.
So
it's almost 20 years old.
Can we not? Because I graduated high school in 2004, and I'm really not ready to.
Okay, I mean, it was like 5 years old.
Thank you. So at the end when she feeds her father the poison, and the mother is sitting there in the corner, that was really powerful for me, because that didn't happen in my life, and so I got to kind of live vicariously through that in this movie, and I found a little bit of a new appreciation for it. It still was terrible, but it's a little bit of a new appreciation for it in a different light. I wanted it. I wanted to believe it. Like I think that there was parts that could have been really well done. Like when thinking about like the legends that you read about online about the Bell Witch, and then listening to the voice of the spirit or whatever is talking to them, and then it starts mimicking them, and it's swirling around, and the camera's swirling around. I mean, the effects weren't great, obviously, especially not even for 2005, but like the camera angles when it was like searching, the ghost was, or whoever was searching for the girl, and it was going through the walls, but it was showing like the splintered wood, and like going under furniture, and like the books were piled under a thing. Like I thought that was all very immersive, but then it's all ruined because I wanted it to be real. Like I wanted it to be really the witch, and I wanted it to be really the ghost, and I wanted it to be really the curse. And that spoiled for me at the end. So this was very early on in my horror movie experience. It sort of kickstarted for me this quest that I went on to find a movie that was about a ghost, about a haunting, about something paranormal that didn't get ruined by the end and scared the ever living daylights out of me. And this one did not do it. So I continued on for that. But I did, like I said, I did get a little bit of a new appreciation for it, having watched it earlier today. And I have quotes for you guys.
Okay.
A couple.
Yeah.
Okay. In the spirit of that, so I only a couple, because there wasn't a lot of dialogue in this movie. The ghost mostly had most of the lines, but in that spirit of the women in this movie sort of empowered the woman in me. There was a couple lines when in the beginning when she's holding the mistletoe over her teacher, and her father, scolds her, and she says, "It's Christmas, Father, and I am simply attempting to learn the traditions. Who better to learn from than one's teacher?" Like, get it, girl, like, do it. So I like that. But then when everyone's telling them, oh, it's made up, oh, it's, and he comes over and he's saying, like, she's having a nightmare, or you can explain it away this way. And then it happens to all of them, and the mother looks at him deadpan and says, are we all having nightmares now, Professor? I was like, yes.
That was clever.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think to me, those little pieces of like empowerment, that's what this movie did for me.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll go. I did not hate it like you guys. I rarely do. I'm like, movie people should hire me because I like almost everything. It's like that glass half full thing. And number one, I am a super Donald Sutherland fan. I always have been. he's just been one of my favorite actors since I was born, and just seeing him there, I just loved it. And Sissy Spacek and the girl, and seeing everything that they go through and everything that they went through. I got caught up in the movie and the relationships and everything, which I love to do. I try not to watch it as a critic, even though we're supposed to. I don't. And I, at the end, again, is finding what it really was at the end. Instead of being spoiled like Courtney, I was like, I should have knew that. I did know that. How could I knew that? But I blocked it. I mean, that kind of thing. So I had interesting moments to myself. I knew that. I knew it was so. I just got swept up in it, which is what you want to do it to me in a movie and an entertainment. I was scary enough. It was pretty enough, spooky enough for all that, and had amazing people in it. So I liked it.
Well, I think that reaction too that you're talking about having, that is in a real life situation of the same variety, that's the reaction that a lot of people have. So that to me says the movie did its job. Also, Chad Hatter in the comments saying growing old is not a sin reminded me that I had one more quote, which really tickled me this time, knowing what the ending of the movie was, when Donald Sutherland was like begging for his family's life, and he said he's trying to rationalize and says even saints commit sins of some sort. Like, yeah, okay, like I said some swear words.
The quote that stuck out for me is when he said when Kate Bat says I didn't put a curse on you, you cursed yourself. And at that point you don't know what it is, but that obviously we know what it is. We know how he cursed himself by the end. So that stuck out on me as a quote.
Yeah, that was good.
I did like that they included that part, because according to however much historical accuracy there is, she said, Ms. Bat said that she had nothing to do with it. People in the village had long called her a witch because she was odd and she was weird and she didn't have as much money as everybody else. And they called her a witch. And then she finally says, I didn't have anything to do with this. Why are you blaming me? Why would I do that? So I liked that they added that into the film.
Yeah. I think they, for me, first of all, this was the first movie that we've watched that I had my family watching it, because my daughter is now getting old enough and getting into paranormal. So we watched it as a family, and so it was
sorry.
Oh no, it was fine. I don't think this is the worst horror film that I've ever seen. I'm not complaining. And I'm like Patti, like I tend to see good parts of it and interesting parts of it as a film historian. So I think it's interesting in the context. And what's really interesting is this is one of the few films that I mentioned in the book, but I didn't actually watch, because I couldn't watch every film that from my book that I didn't. And so this was one I didn't. So it was really nice to go into it sort of fresh and knowing the context. And I really felt like the social commentary part of the film, the story of the girl and the daughter and the mother and the family, was forced into the Bell Witch lore. That it was forced. And it really, I think there's two horror stories going on here, and neither one was told right. The horror story that it could have been told truly about the Bell Witch. Give us a true Blair Witch style horror story. Exaggerate a little bit, fine, but make that the ghost witch horror story. That's one story. Then you have the horror story of what happened with the family. That's another story. That's a social commentary story. That's a life story. That was a secondary story, and they merged them together, and neither one was told well. But like Courtney said, she got something out of it, and that's what movies are supposed to do. And if she got something out of it, then the movie did something for someone, and that's fine. So I'm neither here nor there. It's the way I would describe it is, I think this movie is forgettable.
Yeah.
And I would much rather Yeah, and exactly. And I personally would rather make, as a filmmaker, I'd rather have a film that's hated or loved than forgettable. So I really think it's the worst possible criticism is to say it's forgettable. You know, that's what I felt after. I'm like, they took this story that could be very powerful and forced it into the lore. And the lore itself is interesting enough. They didn't really need to do that, but that's what they did.
Mary Jane says in the comments, she says, I thought it was an okay movie. Later, when I heard there was an actual Bell Witch, I wondered why they connected the legend with that particular movie. And so we're all in accordance to that. It was visually, it was beautiful. The actors were great. It was top-notch cast. Two different stories that really were not told as well as they could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I really thought, and hold on, I need to like clear out my office a little bit because of this film that we're talking about. I thought this is one of the worst films we've watched on the show, and I really hate the Blair Witch Project passionately. Maybe it's just that era that Heather's talking about that doesn't work for me. But I mean, I'm close to it because I grew up with the legends, and then it doesn't match. It's really, there's a good movie here somewhere. I think that there are some good ideas, but none of them are really fleshed out very well. The best thing I can say about this film, other than it has Sissy Spacek and Donald Sutherland, and I'm also a big Donald Sutherland fan. I mean, that's the only reason I saw those damn Hunger Games movies, is because he is awesome in everything he does. The best thing I can say about this movie is that it's 80 minutes long.
I don't think this is the worst film we've watched. I'm gonna have to look at the list to get back to that.
I'm gonna vote for The Witch That Came from the Sea.
Well, we didn't watch that one.
Yeah, not in the
Who
show.
watched this one?
Yeah, but I mean, I think this is in the running. Absolutely, it's in the running. For it just doesn't hold up very well, and for it doesn't have much to do with witches, which is really sad.
Yeah,
for us as witches. I mean, even the bad witches we usually like.
Yeah,
and I think the way that they tried to connect it to the modern world was disjointed,
clumsy,
unnecessary.
It was completely unnecessary. So, again, spoiler for an almost 20-year-old movie. It starts with a woman who wakes up, her daughter wakes up from a nightmare. Oh, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. And then she reads this letter from some 19th century ancestor. And it talks about how he didn't believe in ghosts, but then he did. And then at the end, she sends her daughter off to go with her dad, the woman's ex-husband. And then the ghost makes an appearance, and then she connects. Oh, there's something else going on. And she opens the door and she sees her daughter's sad face. I mean, clumsy.
Yeah, it was unnecessary. They could have done, there's a lot of just unnecessary stuff in here like that. It was and I think most of the witch ghost witch films at this period of time were actually either women who had been wrongfully murdered hundreds of years ago, 300 years ago, typically is what Hollywood likes to use, Salem. And they come back to have revenge. It's like The Conjurer. Or they're resurrected witches from long ago and they come back. Those are usually like 20-year-old sexy witches that come back. I'm thinking like Ghost Game. And sometimes they're spirits of the woods, or more like the Blair Witch. There's one called the Woods, I believe, and it's a bunch of young girls. And there's a spirit in the woods. It's a kind of a spirit witch, a ghost, something that lives in the woods. So there's a number of them. This is no other film captures the spirit like this during this period of time. And like you guys said, it wasn't a witch. So is this a witch film? It's only a witch film because they tacked on the Bell Witch lore to it and called Kate Batts a witch, which is from the lore. But in the movie, she says one thing about cursing and that's it. So it's tangentially, I think, a witch film, only because it's the connection they made to the Bell Witch.
But it was a big sentence about cursing. It was a very big sentence about
It was.
cursing. It's
It
scary. It
was.
was scary if you were that family sitting there going like that. Okay, I still don't know. I never got the Bell Witch thing. I've seen Blair Witch Project. I've seen this one. What is the story of the Bell Witch? She's just is
That's the thing, though. I mean, it's almost more urban legend than anything else, right? Because as Robert Hicks writes in our comments, there's stories of Indian burial grounds, and then there's the story of the actual family, which is sort of the one that I grew up with. But for me, growing up with it, it was more just about playing the game of the Bell Witch, and there was that cave, so there was this little bit of connection there to something real. But it's one of those legends you can kind of turn into anything that you want. And when I hear things like a Native American burial ground as being a part of it, I think of movies like Poltergeist 2 or Poltergeist,
Pet
right?
Cemetery.
Yeah, and like it's adaptable. It's a really adaptable sort of urban myth kind of thing.
well, every paranormal investigation on television. Indian burial ground. So yeah.
The minute anyone says that to me, I like roll my eyes so hard because it's just you can't. It's not. You can't always be that.
According to the real story, now what the movie did leave out majorly, and I get why, but in the original story, this man John Bell. He was raised in North Carolina, if memory serves.
Yep.
He was raised in North Carolina on a farm, and his mother, they were slave owners, which it's the late 18th century, it's the early 19th century. That's what it was. And so they learned that this witch ghost if things that are whispered in a neighboring town can be told at the same time at this. And so they try to figure out what has happened. And the witch ghost imitates his mother and chastises her slaves with certain words that only his mother would have known, and tells it in two separate places at once. The boys wake up, they're in bunk beds. They wake up to rats gnawing at the bed, and they get up and they look for these rats, and they can't find rats. So they hear what they think is knocking. And so they think maybe it's squirrels, but they get up and they look, and it stops immediately. And so then John thinks that he's going to try to catch these neighbors who are tricking him. And so he waits at one side, and then the knocking happens on the other side. So there's a lot of more poltergeist activity than more witchcraft, but I mean, burial grounds, yes, but also they enslaved people. So you have to deal with voodoo and hoodoo as well.
Didn't they also have wasn't she, after the bells left or whatever happened, didn't she like lurk around, and didn't she like tell people, like I read somewhere that she would whisper to people about what was going on in town, and like and like just chat with people, and she wasn't necessarily, like you said, she's more like a haunting, not necessarily witchcraft, not necessarily even evil. Like she would just chat with people and give people like, hey, guess what's going on next door, kind of stuff.
She loved religious debates, but she said her name was Kate, and she loved religious debates. So she would talk about the Bible because it was her favorite subject. So, I mean, again, 70 some years after the fact, but this is according to the true facts of 1894.
It was also because there was things like she favored Mrs. Bell, and she would say like that she was like the greatest woman on earth and like all this other stuff. So she wasn't even like nasty all the time, for sure.
Maybe
like,
Mrs. Bell was a ventriloquist. Or
I heard that one too, actually. I did. I heard that. I heard that
Mrs. Bell is the greatest of all moms in the entire world. Maybe that's going on.
Patti, I did not grow up with the Bell Witch either. I didn't hear about it till I moved down here to the South. So we didn't have a Bell Witch up in. We had our own haunting and stories and lore up in the Northeast, but we did not have the Bell Witch. I did not hear about her either. So you're not alone.
Okay, good. I thought I was the only person on the planet.
No.
Man.
And can I
Love
just
that
for a
film.
second, like, I want Heather, going back to something that you said earlier when you're talking about the two separate movies there, like, I wish what I wanted this movie to be was that lore horrified. Like, that's what I wanted this movie to be originally, and I think that could have been a really, really great film
Could have been very good.
had they done that, but
Right.
that's not what they did.
That would have been
And
like,
that's
yeah. Go, sorry.
yeah,
Courtney.
that's why it ruined it for me, I think, in the beginning. And then coupled with the fact that I had personal experiences like that, like, I wanted nothing to do with it. But like, even still today, like, I wish we could go back, or someone would go back. Now we're in the age of all the remakes. Everybody wants to redo everything. Redo the story of the Bell Witch, but do it right, and do the legend, and do it scary. Like,
I'm
and
just
don't ruin
thinking
it.
of a long, drawn-out TV show, right? Like 10 episodes, and all of a sudden, Mrs. Bell, this is the best goose anyone's ever had. This plum pudding is the best, you know. Just, and then like episode 7, my favorite of the Gospels is Matthew. You know, just, I mean, that would just be an amazing, amazing show, right? I mean, it would defy all convention.
I think doing a movie would be fine, but I think doing the Bell Witch movie, like you said, would be awesome. Do it
Yeah.
right. Just to take out the story, that other part of the story they imposed on it. But that story that they did impose on it, and there's been movies that have addressed that issue, that has to be also told. But I think it needs to be told and it could be told even with the concept that they use, that the spirit was pushed out the innocence of the girl, and they can do that without the ruse of a horror film, without the ruse of a lore, and do it in a different way, because that act, what happened, is horrifying in and of
Absolutely.
itself. So you don't really need to impose horror on something that's already horrifying in reality. So I think that they could tell that story, make an interesting story out of that in and of itself, and it's been done, so that's fine. But
I think even like that, like the poltergeist piece to that story, like, if you wanted to make it a horror movie and wanted to make that be what it was, then great. If that had been it, and you could have played up the poltergeist activity, and you could have played up this and played up that, and there were still the ways to like leave all the breadcrumbs that come together at the end, and oh my god, I should have known, and oh, I should have seen that coming. Like, that all could have still happened without like you like stealing this story like that.
Right.
That's what it feels like, and it feels like by doing that, you're doing an injustice to that aspect of the story, but B, to this legend that is part of people's history, and part of a whole culture, and part of like it's like Jason said before, it's lasted as long as it has for a reason. Like, it's a story that people love to tell, and it's a story that means something to a lot of people, so don't ruin it. Like, it's I don't know,
and it's fun.
Don't ruin it. Yeah, it
And I
could
think
be a lot more fun.
yeah, and I think the story, the family story, that horror, would have done really well about 10 years later, when the Me Too movement was happening. They could have made that a truly horrific tale if they had done that poltergeist, even if they, like you said, used the poltergeist. So I think that's you've got two stories that ram together not very well. And it happens.
Tabitha makes a point. She goes, what about Andrew Jackson going to check out the witch, but got spooked and turned around? And that's a story, and I think it comes from the original book from 1894. But the problem is, again, there's no way to verify it unless there's a newspaper story or whatever, because before he was president, there wouldn't have been any verification. Like, people weren't paying attention to everything that he did. Again, though, he wouldn't have lived particularly far from there. I mean, Nashville, it would have been maybe a day in a horse or something. I mean, he certainly could have gone up there.
And the version of that piece, like, this is why this is such a great story, because I heard that little piece too, but I heard it differently. That he didn't go. He was fascinated by it. He didn't go. He sent troops to check it out, and they're the ones that got spooked. And so, but that's the best part of an urban legend, is that everybody has a different story. And I don't know.
And the story's better when you can link it to real historical figures too, right? Like, you could put in somebody who became president of the United States, right? I mean, wow, now we've got a real ghost story here because we've got a president. You see that a lot with a lot of things with Abraham Lincoln,
Mhm.
always being
Yeah.
connected to ghost stories.
I think
Always.
what you just said, Courtney, was really important and brings you right back to the Blair Witch Project, and why the Blair Witch Project was so genius is because everybody has a different story and nobody's actually seen it. And that is my argument of why the Blair Witch Project was brilliant, is because there was no witch in that movie. And it was only the legend and only what we believed watching it, and what they were telling us they saw, and what we saw through the camera. And it was so brilliantly done, and it captured the whole idea of the legend tripping and the lore that we're talking about so well in a visceral way. So I think that we see that with the Blair Witch Project, but this is not that. Only the
Okay,
first one, though.
Okay. So did Andrew Jackson go to or send his troops to see a witch or a ghost witch?
I think a ghost witch.
A ghost witch
So
I would
Bell Witch
assume
is a
to
ghost witch.
investigate the stories
of the Bell
the
Witch.
Bell Witch, which was a spectral-like presence. There was a big belief during this time, though, that witches could be like ghosts and like specters. Witches weren't always flesh and blood people. They could be more like sort of a spirit that torments people. And there's a long history of that, too, in
Yeah.
the UK and in the United States.
That was big in Salem.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we're getting close to voting. Again, thank you everybody who is commenting on things. We've got a lot of comments on the movie, so thank you guys for watching it, even though we posted it later than we were going to. So I guess before we move on, I guess we're gonna vote.
Can we vote? Can we vote 3 times? There's 3 things.
Okay.
I think we should vote number 1 on the movie itself, because I know how we're going to vote. I think we should also vote on the cast.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should also vote on its aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
What do you? Is that okay?
Yeah.
For me.
So first, we'll vote on the movie.
Okay, let's vote on the movie itself, and you guys join in. Robert, Tabitha, everybody, vote on the movie itself. So we got neutral, neutral, down, down, neutral. Half up neutral. Is that a half up neutral for you?
That's like I'm at like a 2 o'clock.
Me too. It's a little bit of a raise. Yes, a little bit of a raise. So okay. So what you guys? We've got neutrals coming in. Movie itself, wands up from Robert Hicks. Go, Robert.
Robert,
Yay.
I like it.
Robert, can you type why you like the movie? Because I'm really curious.
Well, like I said, mine keeps moving up higher and higher because I like the story, I like the characters, I like what they went through. Look, it's raising and raising.
No.
raising.
I'm trying to push it further down. Just like, are we touching the ground? We're touching the ground.
Okay, it's okay, Krista. You didn't do this week's homework. So pretty movie, but okay. So we've got neutrals, we've got mostly downs. Robert, please feel free to tell us why you liked it, but mine kept moving up because again the characters, the relationships, and Donald Sutherland. So
let's vote on the cast.
Okay, now we're gonna vote on the cast. Everybody, wands up, wands up, wands up, wands up, wands up. Okay, whew, that's good. Donald Sutherland's very happy. I thank you for that. And Sissy Spacek. So all right, now aesthetics, right?
Yeah,
wands
the aesthetics.
up from Shelley. Hi, Shelley. Alicia, wands up. Okay, so that seems across the board on the cast. So now we're going to talk about aesthetics, which will take in everything that's aesthetic.
Yeah.
I like the way the movie looked, and I like movies set in different time periods where you don't have a phone to tell Courtney what to do. I think that's good.
Oh.
Yeah.
I need to give okay. I have to change mine because it looked great, but the aesthetic of dolls everywhere, I was not pleased with.
Hey, see, now wait a second. They did that on purpose, which is one of the reasons why I would criticize the movie, because that's just a trope. You throw in a doll, and if it's a horror movie, just to make it a little scarier. Oh, okay. I'm waiting for something to happen with the doll, and I love dolls. So I'm like, okay, so the doll's going to have an important point. Well, no, the doll had no point other than to give us the sense of, oh my goodness, dread. Something's
that's
going to
not-
happen.
That's not true. The doll did have a point, and I think it had a very powerful point.
The
because
innocence.
No, but like the cracked face, right? The cracked face, and the fact that the doll was thrown when the horrible thing happened, and that's when it cracked its face, and the doll's face was cracked the whole time until it went back. Like that was, and yes, the innocence, but like I think that like just physically, not even. I'm waving my wand around wildly. I think that is something that I did like, and that I did appreciate the doll's presence for. Other than the fact that I had to pause it in the beginning and be like, I hurt my own feelings. I suggested this and I hurt my own feelings.
There were two dolls.
Yes, I didn't like it. There was a lot of them. They were terrible.
I thought the
One
dolls
down
were
on the
like
dolls.
I thought the dolls were like red herrings, right? Like you're wondering if all of the haunting is connected to the doll, and in the
Right, that's
modern
what I thought.
world, because there's the doll there, something bad was going to happen due to the presence of the doll. And when I saw the doll, I was like, why did Courtney recommend this film?
I think the doll was just a doll. A little girl who's tortured like that goes to her doll if she doesn't have a black fillet.
Yep.
I don't think it was because it was a horror film. I think it's because I would go to my baby doll.
I'm going to be real honest with you guys. This is not my proudest moment because I'm not a victim blamer. But I feel this is a safe place with my movie coven here, right? I said out loud multiple times as things were happening in the beginning, I was like, well, serves you right because you're clutching that doll a little too close. And of course, that's what's going to happen to you. And then, of course, I felt terrible at the end, but it is what it is. And I blamed everything on the doll.
And that's another movie, Courtney. And here's
Yeah.
there's 3 movies.
There's 3.
Stay consistent, Courtney. We appreciate it.
So, all right. So we've got this last one we didn't kind of go there, but it was more up than down on the aesthetics in general. It was like 1 o'clock. We're getting very fancy with our voting, you guys. We're going to have decimal points soon. But everybody liked the cast. The movie was a little iffy and that. So we thank you guys for checking in on that. We don't know what we're going to do. We know what we're going to do next week?
I think we have to ask our trusty producers.
The Covenant or Suspiria.
Ooh.
Covenant or Suspiria.
I like both of those choices.
I have not seen either of those, but Suspiria I like even better because it's 1977.
Do we know if we could catch them on streaming or TV? I guess that's the determining.
We will find out.
We will find out. So
right now, let's find out.
We will post that when we know.
I mean,
one moment. Let me look for Suspiria right now because
I'll look up the Covenant.
Okay. Ooh, look at in real time phones. This is great.
I know. See, Suspiria, 1977.
2000. So there is the Covenant out now in theaters, and that is not the right one.
no, that's Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
Oh,
The Covenant is the one that is
Looks like it's on
that
Tubi.
the witch movie The Covenant is from 2009, I believe.
I think I'm looking at the wrong one because this one says darkness swirls at the center of a world-renowned dance company, and then it's 2018. That's not right, is it? That can't be right.
The Covenant 2000 is free on Tubi. And then Suspiria is
It is on Amazon Prime.
and Tubi. So
Okay.
they're both free to stream.
Well, either way,
Let's pick now. Let's pick now.
What does everybody in the comments want?
Yeah, you guys pick now.
Suspiria.
Suspiria. Suspiria. Well,
Yes, and
Yeah, Dead Poet Boy said cover Suspiria.
So
okay.
I just want to point out The Covenant is a 2006 movie with 4 male witches. It's not 2000. That's a different movie. So yeah. So if we're doing Suspiria, that's fine. But The Covenant has 4 male witches. It's 2006, and it's like as if a boys band was also a bunch of witches, historical witches from Salem.
That is what I wanted you to say, Heather.
I want to
The
watch
boys
that
band?
so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
I wanna
is.
watch
Have
it.
you seen it?
No, but now I really, really
Now
want
I
to.
want
Oh
to.
yeah, you have to see this.
Well,
It is
can we pick
streaming
both
on-
of them?
It's
One
on
next
Amazon. It's on Amazon Prime for $3.99 and YouTube for $3.99. So it's a cheap rental.
I think, yeah,
Okay. How about Suspiria next week and The Covenant the week after?
got it.
We could
I
be
like it.
all prepared with our homework if we remember that. We'll have to rob it. What were we picking? I'm never like, what did we pick? Okay. So, anybody have anything coming up? Anybody wants to do? We've already talked about that.
I just found out that I will be in Orlando, Florida, June 8th through 11th for Summer Magic Fest, which is a new indoor pagan festival in Florida, in Orlando, an hour from the airport. So S.J. Tucker will be there. Kobe Michael will be there. I'm very excited to be a part of that. So
Yay.
yay.
I was interviewed on a podcast, 222 Paranormal Podcast. So you guys can go on and listen to that. Myself and my friend Gigi, who is from Paranormal XL Podcast, we were interviewed by Joe and Jen, the hosts, about our haunted road trip, mostly Villisca. It's really weird when you're listening. There was a lot of audio issues, which seemed very suspicious based on what we were talking about when the audio issues happened. And there was some internet issues as well. But if you stick through it, you'll get our very first real reaction to it. It's the first time that we got together and we really trauma dumped all over it. So if you want all the behind the scenes, there it is.
Okay. Cool. All right. Robert asked, which covenant should we look for? The 2006, you said, Heather?
It's 2006, and if you look at the pictures of it, it has 4 they're supposed to be high school age, but 4 boys band looking high school boys. Very supernatural looking.
It looks
in
like
the
Twilight
show.
a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like exactly. They're 4 high school boys from the Sons of Ipswich. It's the one. So there it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And that's in 2 weeks, right? That's in 2 weeks. Next week, we said Suspiria first.
So I
I
want them to say like bye, 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 bye. That would be awesome.
We can
Listen.
totally do some boys band music in the background.
I am available for that because that's what I grew up on. Bye, bye, bye.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
no.
Suspiria, though, that's what comes up with Suspiria.
I'm
Yeah.
excited about that also.
That's the non-Italian newer movie, not the original that we're gonna.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen either of them, so maybe I'll accidentally watch the wrong version. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
If
going
it's
to
on
be.
Tubi, anything can happen.
That's true. We know that. I was just going to say that I'm just going to be at Mystic South. Oops, my earpiece fell out again. And that's in July. And so I'm preparing, as I said earlier, for my haunted doll workshop there, as well as some other workshops on publishing and writing great witchy books, which is what I do in my day job, is edit them. And I also wanted to let everyone know, if you want to keep up with my articles, to go to my website where I post them. Go to Religion News Service, which is typically where my articles will be found. And so they come up periodically, and they're all on occult and witchy topics. That's what I cover, tarot and all kinds of stuff, goings on in the country about these topics. So you can check out my website for that, and then hopefully see some of you guys at Mystic South in July.
And you guys do follow us, like us, that social media thing we have to do. Please find us. We're on all the social medias, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that. Find our website. You can find the real us. I know Richard-Lael and I at least have fake us, and you guys are going to have them if you don't now. So yeah, because we appreciate that, because you have to. So thank you guys for your input. Thank you guys for your comments. Thank you guys for your votes.
I was mouthing the words.
Yeah.
We're singing.
I accidentally followed Courtney Buckley the other day.
Duckley. That's what my phone autocorrects my favorite word to.
All right. Well, it is that time. We have one more thing to do, and we want everybody in the chat room to join us as well, wherever you are and whoever's at your house with you. Because what do witches do? We cackle. 1, 2, 3.